The beans were still warm in her palm, but the girl who picked them had green skin. How? In Suffolk, they used to say, "Never trust a child who won't eat bread. Never trust a child who speaks in whispers that sound like wind through caves." But in 1147, in the village of Woolpit, trust was all they had left. I am the keeper of the chronicle, the one who tends the records. When the ink grows too faint to read, when the witnesses have all turned to dust, and only the mystery remains, there are stories that refuse to die, stories that cling to the edges of history, like shadows at twilight. This is one of them. Every morning, Agnes would walk to the well, the same path, the same time, carrying the same wooden bucket. She had done this for 3 years now, 3 years since the day she stopped being green. But that morning, August 15th, in the year of our Lord 1147, the bucket felt different in her hands, heavier, as if it remembered what she was trying to forget. The villagers of Woolpit knew about wolf pits, deep holes in the earth lined with sharpened stakes, traps for the creatures that hunted in darkness. But they never expected to find children at the bottom. If you've ever looked at something ordinary, a bucket, a well, a handful of beans, and felt like it was watching you back, stay close. The Chronicle of William of Newburgh tells us that on a harvest day in Suffolk, 2 children emerged from the earth itself, brother and sister, human in every way, except for the color of their skin. Green, like new leaves in spring, like the moss that grows in places where sunlight never reaches. Agnes still remembered the taste of those first beans. Raw and bitter, the only food that didn't make her sick, the only thing that felt like home. The bucket trembled in her hands. Just once, just enough to remind her that some hungers never truly fade. And when she looked down into the well, the water blinked back. But that was only the first page of a story written in a language no one in Woolpit could understand. The morning they found the children, Sir Richard de Calne was mending his fence, the same fence he mended every autumn when the wolves grew bold. If you've ever heard a sound that doesn't belong to the world you know, you understand what happened next. The villagers came running, not the quick run of excitement, but the slow, careful approach of people who have seen too much. In the wolf pit, the deepest one, the one they called Devil's Mouth, 2 small figures huddled together. Their clothes were strange, woven from something that caught light differently, but it was their skin. That made the women cross themselves. That made the men step back. Green, not painted, not stained, but green like living things. Green like the deep forest, where old gods still whispered. Agnes remembered the bucket differently now, how it felt that first day, when Sir Richard's wife filled it with water, how the water looked wrong, too clear, too bright, how everything in this world hurt her eyes. The boy, her brother, wouldn't speak to anyone, wouldn't eat anything they offered. Bread, milk, meat, fruit, all of it might as well have been stones. But when they brought the beans, raw, broad beans from the garden, his eyes opened wide, like he was seeing home for the first time in days. She doesn't answer right away when they ask where she's from. That silence, it changes everything. The Chronicle says they spoke a language that sounded like water over stones, like wind through hollow trees. Beautiful, but empty of any meaning the villagers could grasp. Some said it was the tongue of angels. Others whispered it was something older, something that belonged to the earth before men learned to name it. Agnes learned English slowly, word by word, like collecting pebbles, each new sound taking her further from home. But the bucket, the wooden bucket she carried to the well, that stayed the same, heavy with memory, heavy with the weight of water that tasted like tears. It's like when the phone rings at midnight and no one's there. That hollow sound that makes you remember all the voices you'll never hear again. The boy grew thinner, day by day, like a candle, burning down to nothing. He would sit by the window, staring at the sky. Too bright, he seemed to say. Too harsh. Where was the gentle twilight of the place they called home? But Agnes noticed something else. Something the Chronicle doesn't mention. The bucket never felt empty, even when it was, as if it remembered, being filled with different water. Water from a well that reflected green skies. And every morning when she walked to the well, she could swear she heard it. Faint, like an echo, like a memory trying to surface. The sound of bells, calling from somewhere, deep beneath the earth. The day Agnes finally spoke was the day her brother died. She was holding the bucket, the same wooden bucket that had carried water for 3 years, but now it felt different, lighter, as if something inside it had finally let go. St. Martin's Land, she whispered, the first words in English. That sounded like home. She lights the candle for her brother's vigil, but never looks at it. That's what changed, I think. The moment she stopped, trying to see this world clearly. In the Hebrides, they used to say, never speak a dead child's name after dusk. Never let their memory call you back to places that exist only in twilight. But Agnes spoke anyway. She told them about the land, where everything was green. Not just the people, though they were green too, like her brother. But the sky itself, a green sky that never brightened, never darkened, just hung there, like a veil between worlds. The bucket grew warm in her hands as she spoke, warm like living wood, like something that remembered being part of a tree that grew in different soil. We were watching the cattle, she said, near the edge of our world, where the river runs between the green land and the bright country beyond. Would you have followed those bells if you heard them calling from the mouth of a cave? If they sounded like home, but led you somewhere else entirely? The Chronicle records her words carefully, how they heard a sound like church bells, but deeper, how the sound pulled them into the cavern, how the light inside bent and twisted until they couldn't tell which way was forward and which way was back. The bucket began to crack, just a hairline fracture running down one side, as if the wood remembered being broken once before. And then silence, the kind of silence that comes after falling, after the world changes, and you realize you can never go back. You remember the silence, the one from the Woolpit, how it felt like waiting for something that would never come. Agnes said the hardest part wasn't the bright sun, or the strange food, or the language that cut her tongue. It was the bucket, how it felt wrong in her hands, how the water tasted of iron and salt instead of moss and rain. The window was never open, but the curtain moved. She told them about the river that separated St. Martin's Land from the bright country, how you could see the light shimmering on the other side. But no one ever crossed. No one ever tried. Until the day the bells started ringing, the bucket split completely then, water spilling onto the floor, like tears, like the last memory of a world that tasted green, and Agnes understood that some doors only open once after her brother's funeral. Agnes stopped carrying the bucket. She would walk to the well, empty-handed, stand there for long minutes, staring down into the dark water, as if she was waiting for something to stare back. The villagers whispered that grief had touched her mind, that losing her brother had broken something inside her, but Agnes knew better. She wasn't broken, she was remembering. She closes the drawer with both hands this time, the drawer where she keeps the pieces of the broken bucket. That's when I knew. She was done searching. In the old country, the green country, they used to say, the wind in the caves was listening, always listening, waiting for the right voice to call it home. Maybe you've done the same. Held on to something broken, even after it's gone. Even after you know it can never be whole again. Outside, the branches scraped the window, steady, steady, like fingers tapping against glass. Agnes began to change, not just her skin, though that had been fading since the day she learned to eat bread, but something deeper. The way she moved, the way she looked at things, as if she was seeing them from very far away. She made a choice then, standing by the well, with the broken bucket at her feet. She would stop trying to go back, stop listening for the sound of bells. The pieces of the bucket lay scattered in the grass, each fragment catching sunlight like tiny mirrors. Agnes knelt down and touched one piece, just once, just long enough to remember the weight of water from a different world. The wood was warm, still warm, after all this time, as if it was trying to tell her something. But some messages are too painful to hear, some memories too heavy to carry. They used to say in Suffolk that broken things hold the strongest magic. That cracks let the light in, but also let the darkness out. Agnes felt both, the light of this new world, harsh and bright and real, and the darkness of the old one, soft and green and gone. She gathered the pieces, one by one, not to mend them. She knew they couldn't be mended, but to hold them. One last time. The Chronicle says she was baptized that autumn, took the name Agnes, and learned to live like everyone else. But it doesn't mention the pieces of wood she kept in a small box, or how she would touch them on nights when the wind sounded like bells. Some doors close when you stop trying to open them. Some worlds fade when you learn to see clearly, and sometimes that's the only way to survive. In the archives of Coggeshall Abbey, Brother Ralph wrote carefully the testimony of Sir Richard de Calne and his household cannot be dismissed. But Agnes wasn't the first to carry water in a broken bucket, wasn't the first to speak of green skies and twilight that never ended. In the year 1887, in a village called Banjos, in the mountains of Spain, 2 children appeared. Green skin, strange clothes, a language no one recognized. The boy died. The girl lived. She spoke of a land where everything was green. Word for word, the same story. 700 years later, this is the part I still think about. Not the bells, not the caves, just how quiet it got when people stopped believing. In file number 29 of the Suffolk records, a clerk wrote only 2 children found in Woolpit, origin unknown, 1 deceased, 1 baptized. No mention of green skin, no mention of St. Martin's land, just facts, stripped of wonder. The bucket shows up in 3 separate files, always described the same way: wooden vessel, cracked down one side, property of Agnes Barr. Agnes married, they say, took the name of a royal clerk, and moved to King's Lynn. Lived quietly, died quietly. But the bucket, the broken bucket, that stayed in Woolpit. I don't know if I've remembered this right, but the light never came back after. Agnes never returned to the well, but sometimes, on autumn mornings, when the mist rises from the earth, the villagers say they see her, walking the old path, empty-handed, drifting like memory, between the world that was and the world that is. The broken bucket lies buried now, beneath the oak tree, where the wolf pit used to be, its pieces scattered like seeds in dark soil. I found the last fragment 3 summers ago, still warm to the touch, still holding the shape of water that never was. She used to walk with purpose, but tonight she drifts, and maybe so should you. The chronicle ends abruptly. Brother Ralph's final entry. Some stories resist telling, some truths are too green for ink. The beans still grow in Woolpit, raw and bitter, the way they always have. But no child reaches for them now, with hands that remember a different kind of hunger. The bucket is gone, but the well remains, deep and dark, reflecting nothing but the sky above. Maybe you've heard it too. Just before sleep, the sound of bells, calling from places that exist only in twilight. What was once wood and water is now earth and silence. What was once a bridge between worlds is now just a story, told in whispers. There's nothing else to do tonight but drift. Let the green fade into grey. Let the bells grow quiet in the distance. The green children of Woolpit sleep now in Suffolk soil, their stories scattered like fragments of a broken bucket, like pieces of a world that tasted of moss and rain. That's where we'll leave it for now. You're safe now. Sleep well. I'll be here when the lights go low again.